Hello, this is MusicTechHelpGuy, and welcome to this Logic Pro 10 video tutorial on input processing your audio recordings. So what does this mean? Well, it means that we're going to record through our mic. The signal is going to go to our audio interface and then into Logic. But instead of recording that dry signal directly to an audio track, we'll first pass it through an aux track with EQ and compression on it so that the processing is actually rendered into the recording rather than adding that EQ and compression later. Pretty much every professional studio recording I've ever done, I've run through processing while recording, but usually in the form of hardware EQ and hardware compression units, not plugins. But I understand in a home studio environment, you may not have anything to process with other than plugins. Typically, things like your time-based effects like delay and reverb aren't added at the recording stage, though. But pretty much every professional recording I've ever done has had some form of input processing done while recording. So what are the pros and cons of this? The pros are that you save CPU processing power later because your recordings are already compressed and EQ'd. So it'll help save things like CPU lockups while you're mixing. If you're trying to stack a whole bunch of plugins in your mix, well, input processing allows you to not have to have so many plugins in your mix during the mixing phase. Also, if the recording's being used, say, in a podcast or some other live broadcast, you can send the processed signal to the output rather than the unprocessed dry signal. Also, if you're sending these recordings to a pro studio for mixing, the stems will be a lot easier to work with because they'll have a bit of compression on them already. They'll be a bit more dynamically level than, say, just a dry signal. I'm a big fan of hitting recordings with multiple stages of soft compression rather than just one stage of really hard compression. It always works out better for me. So usually what I'll do is compress on input, compress while mixing, compress a little while bussing, and also while mastering. So it ends up going through 4 stages of compression, but each level of compression is just soft compression. The downside to this process is that it can cause a bit of latency just because we're sending the signal to an aux track, then bussing the output of the aux track over to an audio track with the plugin processing on it. So that process can cause a little bit of latency, but I'll show you how to overcome most of those latency issues in this video. All right, so let's get right into it. So let's set up our session first. For this song, I'm just going to record vocals and acoustic guitar. I'm probably going to double up the acoustic guitar, so I'll have like a left and a right acoustic. So let me just go ahead and create 3 audio tracks. The first one I'm just going to call Vox. The second one I'll call acoustic guitar left and acoustic right. And not that this is a requirement, but just because I like to stay organized, let me put some nice little icons on here. They're there, we might as well use them. All right. So these are really just going to be the tracks that the recordings are captured onto. We're actually not going to directly record to these. We're going to record through an aux track and send the signal, the process signal of the aux track, over to one of these capture tracks. So let me open up my mixer here. I'm just going to hit X, and I'm going to go to Options here, and I'm going to create 2 new auxiliary channel strips. One of them is going to be called Vox in. The other one's going to be called Guitar in. I'm going to make Vox in. Make them both input 1. For now, I'm actually going to turn that off because you'll hear my voice capture through them otherwise. So I'm going to turn the inputs off for now. For the vocals, what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw just the channel EQ on this aux track here. I'm going to bump up the high end a little bit up in this area. I'm going to bump up the low end just a touch, the low mid-range just a touch. Then I'm going to scoop out a lot of everything in this range. Now, I'm just going with settings that I know will work for my voice. You may want to maybe do some tests and find a setting that works for you and then maybe save it as a channel strip setting. After the EQ, I'm going to throw compression on here, just the standard compressor. For vocals, I'm going to use the vintage opto and pull the ratio up to about 4, threshold down a bit. And I'm going to pull the release time up just a touch and the attack time up just a touch. And I'm just going to dial down the mix a little bit from 100%, almost 100%, not completely 100%. Turn the limiter on, although we probably won't even hit the limiter at all. And then what we're going to do, so we're going to use, like I said, we're going to use this aux track to capture the audio recording, but then we're going to bus the processed signal over to the appropriate track over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this output bus 1. So it's going to automatically create an aux track for us. We don't need that. We'll right click and actually we can just click on it and hit delete and delete that. And our audio track over here will input bus 1. So you see what's going to happen here is the mic is going into the interface is going into my computer. The computer is sending it to Logic, and then from the input here it's going to come in input 1 through these effects, out bus 1, and then be tracked onto our audio track with these two effects rendered into the waveform. So for the acoustic guitar, I'm going to use the channel EQ as well. Bump up the high end quite a bit more in the high range up here. Scoop out a little bit of the mids. Not really the high mids, like the lower mids. Bump up the bottom just a touch. And then filter out some of the lower frequencies. There we go. And we'll use compression on this as well. For this, we want some more of the transients to come through. Well, a little more a fast acting compressor. So I'll try to use the Studio FET or the Vintage FET. Let's go ahead and use the Studio FET. Do like a 5-to-1 ratio, a little bit harder compression. Pull the attack time up a bit, just so more of the transients come through. A little quicker release. And then we'll turn the limiter on just in case. Pull the mix down just a touch. And then our acoustic guitar tracks are going to input bus 2. So our aux track, that's the audio streams coming through, is going to output bus 2. So there we go. All right, so basically all we have to do now is set the inputs on these aux tracks to whatever input the microphone is in, arm the corresponding audio track, and hit record. And that's all we really have to do. So for both of these, I'm using input 1 on my audio interface. I'm just muting them because right now I'm talking through input 1, so I don't want them to picked up. So just change this to input 1. Input 1. If you really want to, you can actually right click on these aux tracks and say create track. It'll actually create an instance of the track out here. So you can have your like vocal in and your guitar in here. So yeah, yeah, there we go. That's what happens when you uncheck that or when you unmute it. So yeah, we'll what I'll do in the next section is I will record both of the acoustic guitar tracks, and then I'll go back and record both of the vocal tracks, or the one vocal track, and we'll see what the result sounds like. If you experience a lot of latency trying to record this way, just make sure to go into your preferences under audio and adjust your buffer size to a lower value like 64 or 32 samples. This should take care of most of the latency. One of the problems with recording this way is because of the plugins we're running through and the aux track we're running through, you may experience more latency than you typically would making a recording directly to an audio track. All right, so let's get on with the recordings. I've shown you. Why do we have to say goodbye? Goodbye. All right, so we've got our vocal track and our 2 guitar tracks all tracked with all of the effects rendered right into the waveform. A couple things I just wanted to note. One, if you saw the master fader clipping while recording, that had nothing to do with my recording. That was actually the click track that was clipping it. I just omitted the click track from the videos that I did. Another thing is I changed the tempo, and I also changed the time signature to match the time signature and tempo of the song. And yeah, the only other thing I did is I just adjusted the audio levels here. Keep in mind that when you adjust the volume of an audio track, it doesn't have any effect on the recording level. However, since we were passing all of the audio through these aux tracks, the level of the aux track does matter. So I kept them at unity, basically up at 0 here. So now that we're done recording, we don't really need the guitar track or the guitar aux track or the vocal track anymore. So we can get rid of those. And we can just trim up our recording like we normally would. So just use my marquee tool here just to trim everything up a bit. Just do a nice heads and tails edit and get rid of anything that doesn't need to be there. My vocal performance wasn't the best, but I was also sitting down, which is not recommended. And the song's a little high for my range as well. Let me just drag over all of these, go up to the region parameters, go to more here. I'm going to add a 10 millisecond delay, or 10 millisecond out fade and a 10-second in fade. And then just for the tail end here, I'm going to add a little bit longer fade. There we go. So now it's like we've got these already processed tracks. If I wanted to enhance the recording a little bit better, I could just mix them with some reverb maybe. So drag over all 3 of these. Add a send. Go to bus 1. Let me make sure that the inputs on these tracks are no longer set to bus 1 and bus 2 anymore. We'll pull all 3 of these up a bit. Create a new aux track. Make that aux track input bus 1. Maybe add a touch of reverb. Let's use Space Designer. I really like the medium plate, the soft plate, or the blue plate. Both work nicely. Pull that up. And then maybe just do a little bit more on the vocals than on the guitar. Let's see what that sounds like. Why do we always have to say goodbye? Do we always have to live and die? Can't we live this life for each other? Oh, so many times I've told you, in so many ways I've shown you. Why do we have to say goodbye? Goodbye. So there you go. So again, the advantage of this is now we have these already sort of quasi-processed stems. If we were to send this recording, or flesh out the whole recording, not just guitar and vocals, but if we were to flesh out this whole recording and then send these already pre-processed stems over to another studio for mixing, they're going to have a much easier time working with them. Like I said before, they may actually add more compression. They may add additional EQ to your tracks, but at least we have tracks that are, for the most part, dynamically level. From a frequency standpoint, are pretty present. They stand out okay just by themselves without any processing on them whatsoever. So I hope you guys really enjoyed this video. If you'd like to support the channel, please check out patreon.com/MusicTechHelpGuy and make a monthly contribution. Still trying to hit that $1,000 mark so I can pay to have some professionally recorded studio video tutorials done. So I'm keeping on that Patreon campaign. It's slowly building up. So thank you guys for the support, and thanks for watching.